your host, Kyle Steele, and joining me is a very, very fine crew indeed. Per usual, we have Mr. Keith Schillen. Hello, Keith.
What's up, brother? How you doing?
Please let us know where to find you, sir.
You can find me at Keith Schillen MMA on Twitter. You can catch all my writings at Cage Side Press and Sure Dog. And then, obviously, all the shows I do on this network. I did 2 recaps this week, so make sure you check those out.
And I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. Mother-in-law is in town.
I literally was the first thing I asked you.
No, it was. I said thanks for asking. I wasn't being sarcastic. That was real.
Oh.
I was saying thank you for asking.
Very defensive already.
I was like, come on, I wasn't being sarcastic, guys. Listen, we're going to try really hard this episode to not be contentious. I think, but it's going to take a second for everyone to get used to it. You know, everyone's going to think everyone's being sarcastic and mean, and they're not. We're all going to be pleasant and sweet today. Speaking of pleasant and sweet, who am I going to introduce next? You guys don't know.
Yes, I do, and it better be who I think it is, or you're fired.
The shirtless wonder himself, Mr. Riley Contact.
Well, hey, Kyle, how's it going today, fella?
You know what? It's going great. Thanks for asking.
Hey, thanks, man.
And also joining us this week, the strong and
I guess I don't
type.
get asked for on there, but that's fine.
Well, you were going to say something about a .blog, so we just kind of skipped past that to make sure we, remain relevant in the MMA sphere. I see. Look, now I'm even falling into it. Tell us where to find you, Riley.
Yeah, that's fine. CombatPress.com, MMAintel.blog, where we have some. We've actually been getting higher traffic the last 2 weeks since the fights started coming up again. So it's good to actually have some effing traffic on that website. Sorry, Keith, for swearing.
You got that loudmouth bump. That's what we call that. That had nothing to do with the fights. That's called the loudmouth bump. So don't you worry about that. And we got the strong and silent type of Mr. Sean I has. Hello, Sean.
How you doing, Kyle?
See, strong yet silent. Where can we find you, sir?
On this show, I think I've been called silent before. It's weird. You can find me on Twitter at @sniper_DFS. Talk MMA, but all things DraftKings, daily fantasy sports. Do soccer, MMA. Coming off of to toot my own horn. I'm in a great mood. I won $20,000 last week, so I'm feeling fantastic.
Listen, speaking of getting that loudmouth bump, really getting it. So congratulations. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you. You know what? I'll take the luck wherever I can get it.
And Mr. Patrick Auger could not join us this week, so in his place is Mr. Chris Connor. Hello, Chris.
How we doing, guys? And you can check me out. I've been a little busy today with some interviews, but you can check me out on lastcallradioshow.com. We interview boxers, MMA fighters, even pro wrestlers, and you can also check me out on dqrmradio.com, Last Call. And I'm actually in a good mood. Pro sports are back after months of just going crazy with nothing to watch. And I don't count Michael Jordan's documentary. I was very happy last week. I can't believe I'm saying this. Thank God for the UFC.
Listen, I can believe it. This is an MMA network, right? We got to always love the UFC. We are company men, of course. Let me explain the show real quick for those of you who have not listened to it yet. The first round will consist of 3 questions. They are 45 seconds apiece. Each person will have an opportunity to answer. There is then an automatic rebuttal. After that, we go into the kind of sudden death round, so to speak. It'll be 1 question. It'll be 60 seconds. And it'll be the 1 seed versus the 4 seed, and the 2 seed versus the 3 seed, and the seeding is decided in the first round there with those 3 questions. And then the winner of that round moves into the 5th. That answer's 90 seconds long. Again, automatic rebuttals all the way around in each round. So, without further ado, if we are all ready, let's get into it. Starting off simple here. Just give me your scorecard for both Wednesday and Saturday events. Both of them taking place in Jacksonville. We're happy the UFC is back. Again, we are company men. Give me your best moment. Give me your worst moment. Were the cards better than you expected, worse than you expected? Which was the better card? A couple different areas to go with it. But just make sure you give a grade specifically and give me your best and worst moments. We will start with, Mr. Keith. You go ahead, sir.
They both were better than I expected. I don't think any of us was super crazy on paper for the card. I mean, Wednesday we were all talking about how ugly that card looked on paper, and I thought they both delivered. I give Wednesday a B+. I give Saturday a B. Best thing that happened on Wednesday, I really loved. I couldn't stop talking about the Ricky Simone Ray Borg fight. The wrestle boxing style of both guys, I thought, just meshed really well. Their blending of boxing and wrestling was perfect. It was just a fantastic fight. The worst thing that happened Wednesday was Anthony Smith's corner. I mean, I thought they really let him down. As far as Saturday, the worst thing that happened Saturdays is, a lot of people didn't like the scorecard, especially the Dan Ige fight. But Chris Schiavone versus Eric Gan, who's been on the main card, absolutely flopped. And the best thing, while it wasn't the picture perfect ending, but Walt Harrison returning, just getting back to somewhat of a normal life in terrible circumstances listen, no, I'm not going to rush the Walt Harris death. I'm not going to talk about his death. I'm not going to rush that, but that was the best thing that happened.
And again, like you kind of said, it wasn't the ending that he wanted, but it seemed like he's cool. He's ready to keep going. It didn't seem to derail him too much. So, but glad to have Walt Harris back. Mr. Riley, 45 seconds, sir.
Yeah, I was really happy with Wednesday's card. I would give that a solid B+. Definitely the better of the two cards, in my opinion. The Saturday card was okay as well. I'm not as high on it as Keith was. I thought it was more of a C+. Mostly because of the judging on Saturday night. That really ruined it for me. That was the worst thing to come out of this week of fights, in my opinion, was the judges' scorecards. The Marlon Vera Yadong Song fight was a terrible decision. I did not agree with Edson Barbosa, Dan Ige. The Claudia Gadelha Angela Hill fight could have been argued that was a bad decision as well. So, the judging was definitely the worst thing to come out of this week. I think there were three best things, in my opinion. I think Thiago Moises' Hail Mary beginning of the second round Achilles lock was awesome. That was one of my favorite moments. Drew Dober with a vicious knockout, because I'm a huge Drew Dober mark, and he is finally getting some recognition. And then the last thing was just Nate Landwehr basically acting like a maniac for 15 minutes.
You know what, guys? We're going to adjust the rules on the fly. Both of you guys took 60 seconds anyway. Let's just do 60 seconds for the first round this time. How about that? Sean, you got 60 seconds.
I only want 45. No, actually, because there's two cards, it kind of makes sense. Look, Wednesday card was more of a C for me. It was an okay card, a couple good spots. The way the main event went really ruined it for me. I thought OSP looked awful at heavyweight. That fight, that co-main was bad. Did love the best moment of that card. Agree. It was Drew Dober. I'm been a Drew Dober fan as well, so that was fun to see. Worst moment, I'm watching Michael Johnson implode again. Like, it doesn't matter how much better he is than someone, the dude just can't win a fight, and it's a little bit hard to watch. As for the Saturday card, the worst moment, we've all said it, you got to keep saying it, is the judging. It was atrocious. We have a question about it later. We'll talk about it. Also, Matt Brown, watching these legends get smashed by, like, Miguel Baeza, who I know is a prospect, but come on. I'm done seeing legends get smashed. Same thing with Ben Saunders, all that stuff. And in terms of best moment for Saturday, I won't take the cheap way out. And not just Nate Landwehr and Darren Elkins. Darren Elkins puts on fantastic fights. The damage, never boring. Love that fight.
I'm going to ignore the fact that you called Ben Saunders a legend, and I'm just going to move on to Chris
No,
Connors.
okay, vets. I meant vets. That is a good point. Veterans.
Okay, fourth seed. Chris Connors, go ahead.
All right, I'll say this. The Wednesday card, I give it a B. I didn't have high hopes, but you know what? It was pretty fun. The highlight to me was watching, as a lot of people said, some two young guys, Thiago Moses and Drew Dober, literally putting themselves on the map. I would love to see Dober get a bigger fight going forward. The worst part about, as you said, Wednesday was just Anthony Smith Teixeira. That fight had me scared. I was worried that we might actually see a guy eventually get killed in the ring because his corner just doesn't want to protect him. They'd rather see him. It's either fight or die, but that's a whole different story. Saturday, I give it a B+ card. I mean, you had everything you wanted. You had a lot of young kids take a big step up. Miguel Baeza looks very solid. Kevin Holland, Nate Landwehr. I like Rodrigo Nascimento, a heavyweight who can actually go to the ground, get submissions. The only bad part I hate about Saturday's card was just Walt Harris in terms of it felt like almost, a pat on the back for everybody. And as I said, I started crying at the end because I wanted Walt Harris to get closure. It sucked watching him getting knocked out.
For the rebuttals, we will go back to 45 seconds. I don't think we need 60 seconds for rebuttals. You know what? We're going to start with Riley, just because he seems like the place to start here.
Oh, I didn't know we had a second melodramatic person on this podcast. Anthony Smith was going to die in the octagon. I'm sorry, guys. I've seen bigger beatdowns than that before. I'm not saying that he took a big beating in that fight, but we almost saw our first death in the octagon. Are you kidding me? That is ridiculous. In terms of rebutting what most people said, Rodrigo Nascimento being able to submit guys on the ground, he submitted Don'Tale Mayes. Don'Tale Mayes got choked out by Cyril Gane, who is not really known as a grappler himself. So Mayes obviously has discrepancies on the mat. Great athlete and a great striker, but he's not exactly a Gracie clan member. Other than that, I agree with a lot of what people said. I'll just touch on the Walt Harris thing really quickly at the end. I think we kind of all knew Walt Harris wasn't going to beat Alistair Overeem, but again, I think the feel-good moment is that he did get back in there, especially considering how soon the tragedy to his stepdaughter happened.
You've done a very good job, really, at not cussing, but I'm going to need you to not talk about the clan while you're on here, too.
The Gracie clan, for God's sake.
Let's keep that at home as well, my friend.
Easy, Snowden.
You know what? In interest of keeping things interesting, Chris, I'll let you respond first, and then you got your 45 seconds, then we'll move on.
I get where he's coming from here about, me being melodramatic, but you know what? I was there when Patrick Day got killed in the ring, and it didn't look bad. Anthony Smith looked bad, and I know I'm being melodramatic, but fighters, you know what? Most of them, they'll break their arms. They can have, fingers sticking out, toes sticking out, and they'll go, screw it, we'll go forward. At what point do we look at the corners and go, you're the adult. You got to be the adult. That's what really pissed me off about that corner, especially when you have James Krause. You have a guy who knows exactly what Smith's going through. And even Joe Mercer, who you had on the show when we're going to be interviewing his interview on Wednesday on LastCallRadioShow.com, even he said Krause is at fault. Krause should have done a better job. And as I said, that's all I need to say about that.
10 seconds. You don't need the 10 seconds. Smith or Keith?
Well, first, I think Chris should lose some points for using the word literally wrong when he meant figuratively. I think Sean was a little hard on the Wednesday's card. I mean, I don't know what he wants. It was five stoppage wins. There was 4 fights where the fighter lost the open round and had to come back and get diversity, get wins. He talked about he doesn't want to see veterans lose. Well, then he should have liked this week because Alistair Overeem, Andre Arlovski, Ben Rothwell, and Glover Teixeira all got wins. And as far as Walt Harris not knowing, we all should have known that Walt Harris was going to lose to Alistair Overeem. Well, Walt Harris walked in the cage as the favorite, and he almost knocked out Alistair Overeem in the first round. And if he wasn't so over anxious, he probably would have. So I don't know what Riley's talking about. It's very shocking to knock out Alistair Overeem. That's like the granite chin Alistair Overeem.
I love how this is by far the calmest we've been. I feel very calm. I'm zen, and
it's got to be Auger. He's a rowdy one.
This is.
I'm about to take a shot back at Keith, but respectful, kind of like he just did to me. So we're doing better.
It is. It's the calmest we've been, yet we're still taking shots. I appreciate it. Sean. Go ahead.
So with that, Keith, I was talking about guys getting mercilessly knocked out. Andre Arlovski won a decision. I'm talking guys getting flatlined, like Matt Brown, and Michael Johnson looking horrendous. It's different in the quality of losses I'm talking about. When it comes to, I want to touch on the Saturday card because I didn't so much in my first answer. I actually thought that was better. People rated that lower. I give that a solid B+. The prelims were insane. The commentators pointed it out. You got Brian Boom Kelleher, who I'm a hater of. That was a big knockout of Hunter Azure. You had the Thiago Moises heel hook, still fun. The Chase Sherman Ike Villanueva fight, known as the curtain jerker, sloppy fight, still fun. I enjoyed the card, and it kind of just it. I'm not talking about the Wednesday card. The Saturday card, I should have looked at the wrong one. The Nate Landwehr fight, Kevin Holland was a lot of fun. Miguel Baeza. I think it's the judging that's throwing people off on Saturday. Overall, I enjoyed the week of fights. They were better than I thought they were going to be overall because I thought we were just throwing shit up against the wall, and we kind of did, but it stuck.
I do agree with one. No, don't start responding. Hold
Oh
on.
no, I just got a question. Like I got confused because was he talking about Wednesday or Saturday?
I Saturday, and I read
Okay,
off the few
because
wrong
he's just
fights, so
saying how Wednesday wasn't-
circled.
Okay,
Right, listen.
I was just
and
confused.
then I caught myself. I
But you were
was looking
saying
at the
how
wrong
Wednesday
list.
wasn't that good, and then you talked about how the
Fourth seed.
prelims was
I still
amazing.
think Saturday. I still think Saturday was better.
Man, this guy says
Can Sean
Saturday
be eliminated from the
was-
first round?
the card's amazing, and he gives it a C.
No.
I hope he's never my teacher.
Amazing. The main card, Andrei Arlovsky, Felipe Lins. Oh, that was so good. Ben
No.
Rothwell OSP was disgusting.
You said it was no. I'm not saying amazing. You said it was amazing, not me. You said it.
I said the Saturday card was good, and then I listed the few good fights on Wednesday.
All right.
Easy, Keith.
All right.
Look at Keith.
All right.
Look at the
Savages.
Well,
All right,
look at the
I want
Savages.
to jump in here for
Sean,
a
next
second because
question, you've been
I get where you're coming from with the Wednesday cards. I understand, but there were two really bad cards in the main event for Saturday. And look, I love Eric Andrews, but he needs to go to a better fight. Better fight camp. Him and Jocko Lerney put me to sleep. And Claudia Gadella, what the hell happened to her? I mean, she used to be a monster. Now her and Angela Hill, it was almost like just watching like a kickboxing match. I mean, those were two fights that looked and went, oh my God, they're just awful. I mean, they shouldn't be on that high up in the main card. And to me, they brought down the Saturday card.
How about this? I'll put a quick bow on it. The best segment, prelims main card of all the week were the prelims on Saturday. And we had 5 finishes, and Erwin Rivera put on a great performance. And a loss, but that was fun.
My laughing is triggering my asthma. Oh, you guys are savages, man, for no reason. It's just uncalled for, All right, question 2. Surprisingly, we're moving into our second question, not our fourth. This is a question we've asked on the show before. However,
Keith will still take 4 minutes.
It's basically a brand new panel, so I kind of want to ask it again. In a late stoppage situation, like we've already discussed with Glover Teixeira, and Jesus Christ, I might need to get my inhaler. Jesus, Anthony Smith. What percentage responsibility do you give on the corner? What do you put on the ref? What do you put on the fighter, if anything? Explain. Try to get percentages for each. Even if it's 0, say 0. We'll start with Sean.
So, see, Kyle's not even listening to my answer. Look at him. He's walking away. He's got headphones on, so I can talk now. Sorry, just busting your balls. It's a case-by-case situation. You can't just say in a bad situation it's 100% on the corner or 50. It's case-by-case. And this, you want me to talk about this specific case? This is 80% in the corner, 20% on the referee. Other than that initial blasting, there was no big moment where Glover's pouring it on to the point where you're yelling "stop the fight." It was just continual damage over and over and over. And at some point, the corner needs to stop that. And the ref does have some responsibility, but in that kind of a beating, I put it on the corner. Now, when you see guys get dropped 2 or 3 times and it's all this action happening in 80, 90 seconds, that's when I put it on the ref. That's what they're in. That's more on them. They're right there. Quick decisions. You're trying to coach your fighter. So I leave the coach out of that one. When it's a prolonged just butchering, corner. That's how I look at it.
Okay, solid. Riley?
I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong answer to this. So, I didn't totally agree with what Sean said, but I can see where he's coming from with that. I think there's 0% responsibility on the fighter themselves. These guys are proud guys. They don't want to quit. And here's the thing, too. Whenever a guy quits on the stool or something like that, they get criticized mercilessly. So we can't have it both ways. I would say that a majority of this falls on the referee, the reason being that the referee's job is not only to make a good stoppage, it's to keep the fighter safe. And I don't care what anybody says. I don't think Anthony Smith was intelligently defending himself at points in that fight, to the point that there could have been at least 1 or 2, maybe even 3 times that the referee could have stepped in and stopped that. In terms of the corner, I'd give them a minority percentage. I'm not going to put a number on it. They do have a responsibility also to make sure that their fighter is safe and not getting their brains, smashed in. But again, they're also strategizing. They know how their fighter's going to feel if they step in and they didn't want them to. So in the same way, they kind of have that same pride as the fighter, that they don't want to step in if the fighter didn't want it. So I'd say they have a little bit less of a responsibility than the ref.
Chris?
I agree with him in terms of, I don't blame the fighters. Kvarovic basically will go and fight no matter what. I blame it, I'd say 60% corner, 40% referee. I blame the corner because they're seeing what's going on. They're talking to the fighter. They know their fighter. They see him more. And they're the parents in this, I call it, in their relationship. The fighters are kids. The corners are the parents. We keep saying, oh, well, this is MMA, it's just, it's the warrior mentality. At what point do we hold the corner and say, look, boxing trainers, they'll save their fighters. MMA trainers, they'll let their guys, just go in there and take a beating. That's why, to me, it's time we hold the corners accountable. This is 2020. It's no longer 1995, and we just go, all right, well, just no towels, no anything. Screw it. If you go in there, it's fight or die.
Mr. Keith?
Yeah, I actually agree with that one. I don't put it on the fighter at all. I give it 0% for Anthony Smith. I mean, these guys are too tough for their own good. I mean, take Anthony Smith's history. This guy could have been a UFC champion if he took a DQ, but he didn't want to win the title that way because of how tough he was. Remember, if you go back when John Jones illegally kneed him in that fight? I mean, the same card, Gabriel Benitez shin bone was showing, and this guy was still fighting. These guys are, like I said, they're too tough for their own good. They don't want to quit. They always think they're in the fight. I mean, this is why Dominic Cruz, for a week straight, has been talking every second about how he took 12 unanswered punches in a row, but somehow it was at early stoppage. As far as the referee, I'm going to give him 1%. Jason Herzog took blame on himself because he's a classy guy, but he gave those warnings, like protect yourself, do this, and every time he did, Smith tried something. He'd go for a single or something. So I put 99% of the blame on the corner. I mean, Smith was physically broken. He had a broken collarbone, broken nose. He had problems with his right arm. He's telling the corner he's missing teeth. And Mark Montoya has a long history with this. Thomas Gifford was the biggest beatdown last year, and Mark Montoya, everyone was calling should have thrown in the corner. Someone is absolutely going to get seriously hurt.
Sean, 60 seconds.
So going off what Keith just said, someone is absolutely going to get hurt. And I know we've talked about being melodramatic before, but the Anthony Smith beating, that's how someone gets hurt. And that's what's going to be bad for MMA. Prolonged beatings. That's what the real problem is in boxing. That's why in some ways MMA is safer than boxing, and that knockdown is usually the fight's ending. The repeated head trauma. Maxim Dadashev. Buddy McGirt, go ask Buddy McGirt stopped the fight. He did a good job. He stopped it. And Dadashev still, unfortunately, passed away from repeated brain trauma going on and on and on. The fighter, no responsibility. They're not going to quit. That is not their job. As the trainer, it is your job to stop the fight during a prolonged beating. If it's something, if the guy's just laying there unconscious getting beat on, then I'm going to put it on the referee. But the prolonged stuff, like I said, that's, to me, more on the trainer, and it's going to be bad for MMA. Like 5 rounds, that's where things get especially dangerous. So this needs to be corrected. I agree with Keith as well. Something needs to be done about Mark Montoya because Thomas Gifford's not going to make it to 40 either.
Which was worse? Just side note, which was worse?
Montoya.
Okay.
Montoya altogether, but I meant Gifford.
Yeah,
Gifford Montoya.
I knew what you meant.
Yeah,
Keith.
Yeah, I mean, Thomas Gifford goes 3 rounds with Mike Davis, gets absolutely destroyed. And we talk about how prolonged beatings can take an effect on you. And I mean, we look at what happened. He got cut by the UFC. He takes his next fight. He gets knocked out. I think it was like 30. Let me see. I have it right here. It was like 33 seconds in his next fight against a guy who's 11-12 in his career. And he was actually 10-12 at the time. So, yeah, he goes against Mike Davis, one of the top prospects in all of MMA. He can make it 3 rounds, takes the amount of damage that he does, and now he's getting knocked out by losing record Cliff Wright in his very next matchup. So yeah, Mark Montoya, to me, his stock is absolutely plummeted as a coach. I actually was going to mention the Russian fighter that I think he's Russian, but the guy that Sean was just talking about. I wrote it down. I was worried about my time, but Sean is absolutely right. His coach did the right thing, and he still died. So imagine when we have MMA coaches not doing the right thing. We had this whole big thing lead up to Jacksonville was making sure fighters are safe, the whole COVID, and then we go the opposite direction and let them take such a worse beating. Imagine if the whole world is watching. Imagine if the only sport is MMA, and now the only thing's talking on SportsCenter is the death of Anthony Smith, because that's what we could have had.
Riley.
Well, I think there's one thing that I think we're missing in this conversation. We talked about the corners. We talked about the referees having some responsibility. What about the cage side doctor? Does the cage side doctor not have some responsibilities themselves? I mean, listen, I'm sure the doctor was in there between rounds. If I'm not mistaken, I remember him being in there in between rounds. He could have seen what was happening to Anthony Smith, and he could have stepped in and stopped the fight as well. So I think that's a missing equation as well. And, in terms of the Thomas Gifford thing, I think that was definitely a much bigger beatdown than the Anthony Smith one. But Anthony Smith deserves to be in the UFC. Thomas Gifford was never a UFC level fighter. He was in over his head in any fight he was in to begin with. I actually, when he got signed, I said, why did all the lightweights the UFC have, and they signed Thomas Gifford, which he retweeted, which was weird. So I think that's my big part of this rebuttal is definitely we have to look at the doctor as well, because the doctor's a health medical professional. They should know these things. He should have been able to look at Anthony Smith and be like, this guy is pretty screwed up. We should probably stop this.
Solid. And Chris Conner.
I want to bring up a fight which was a while back, but it had nothing to do with Montoya, and that was Gavin Tucker when he got his first loss. And we were all upset because his jaw's broken. You see what's going on. You have his wife crying, saying, stop the fight. His corner didn't stop the fight. I worry about this toughness because, I've had long talks with a lot of boxing trainers, from Buddy McGirt to Andre Rozier. Their feeling has always been, you got to be the adult. You have to be the one who looks at the fighter and says, we're going to take care of you. We know you don't want to be stopped. We know you're too tough for your own damn good. That's why we're doing this. And another guy I want to hold up responsible, by the way, Dominic Cruz, I think, deserves some blame in all this because his comments to Keith Peterson were way out of line. And I think that really affected Herzog, a bunch of guys this weekend. You heard him bitch about, I smelled beer and cigarettes. And I think referees are really worried about, getting the wrath of fighters, getting the wrath of the UFC, and being told, oh, you're stopping fights too early. And that's what we saw with Smith and Glover Teixeira.
The weirdest part to come out with all that Keith Peterson, Dominic Cruz stuff was that everyone keeps mentioning cigarettes as if that would have any bearing on your reffing of a fight. It's so bizarre.
I was thinking the same thing.
What does it have anything to do with it's like if he smells like beer, all right, but everyone keeps saying beer and cigarettes, and it's like, and Chris, I'm not making fun of you. That's what everyone's saying, and it's like, what does cigarettes have to do with anything? It's so bizarre that's part of the narrative.
Dominic Cruz should be sending thank you letters to Keith Peterson, because everyone's talking about an early stoppage instead of the fact that he looked absolutely terrible and got smashed by Henry Cejudo, and it's 2 fights in a row that Dominic Cruz got absolutely destroyed in title fights, and he's a shell of the former fighter that he was.
The whole narrative is switched. Good round, folks. Good round. Let me pull up my questions. Question number 3. Last and final question of round 1. What is a must-see fight that needs to be made given a result from this past week? Let me explain. Say Dan Ige needs to fight X given his performance this past weekend. Overeem needs to fight Y given his performance from this past weekend. Pick a fighter from the past week that you'd really like to see fight a specific person next. Hopefully that is clear. To start with Riley. We haven't started with Riley, correct?
I don't believe so. I don't know. I don't think there's a whole lot of exciting things coming out of this weekend, in my opinion. There's not too many fighters that I looked at that won their fights that I'm like, oh, we have to have this matchup. I will go with 2 fighters. I will go with Alistair Overeem Because he did get a win in a shallow division, I think he takes on another top 10 guy. Based on matchups and guys he hasn't faced, I would say Alexander Volkov would be a fight I would like to watch, especially considering their striking backgrounds. Again, it's not really a fight I'm fancying, but I got to give you an answer here. The second one I want to see is Drew Dober, and he can go two paths here. He can either take another hot top 20 guy that's above that prospect status, but not quite in the top 10 yet. So I like him versus Islam Makhachev. Or if you want to give him an established name, a guy who's a longtime veteran, a former champion, again, a striker, which would make it an interesting fight, Anthony Pettis. And again, I think I'd rather see him fight Islam, but Anthony Pettis would be a name for him to build himself up on more.
Listen, I don't want to give too much away here, but I will say Riley is crushing this week. So just keep that in mind, the rest of the panel.
I'm sober.
Riley is crushing this week.
He's crushing it when he gets to name like every fighter on the roster as possible matchups.
I named 3 people, you fool.
Yeah, the question was name one fight. One.
I chose 1 from each card.
Which equals 3. Keith, you go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Drew Dober too. This guy should face a ranked fighter. This guy has won 5 out of his last 6 fights. 3 straight knockouts. He just smashed a ranked guy in Anthony Hernandez, number 15. So I don't think he should face a top 20 guy. I think he should fight a guy higher than top 15. This guy, his stock is absolutely rising. This is Justin Gaethje's main training partner. The guy's 31 years old. They kept talking about him entering his prime years. He says he wants another striker. So I highly doubt that he's going to want to go against Islam Makhachev, who's going to come out wrestling. So I think he should get a decent name, a step up in competition, and a striking style. The guy who fits that. How about Ali Aquinta? He's a big name. He's got a boxing style. And Drew Dober would absolutely starch him. So that's another reason why I think it's good. So, and Sean, you should have been a veteran. You should have did what Riley does and have a whole bunch of names written down so that you just go to the next one.
I got to pivot. Give Keith a point for that. That's absolutely the right answer.
Just go Mad Lib style. You know what, Sean? Listen, We'll go to Chris. We'll get to you last.
Yeah, I got to pivot here.
Give you some time.
My answer.
Chris, go ahead, sir.
Well, I don't want to seem like I'm jumping on the whole Drew Dober thing, so I got to move here. I'll say this. You know what match I'm looking forward to, and I was thinking about this. I want to see and it's a bit weird here, Dan Ige versus Max Holloway. You know what? I know everybody's saying, we want to see Holloway, Volkanovski next. I'd say let's do something a little bit weird here and creative. Dan Ige's had a nice little win streak here. Holloway, I think, needs a bit of a breather. So I'd say, Dan Ige, Max Holloway, let's go crazy here because you know what? I want to be a little bit crazy. And for the Wednesday card, damn it, I'm going to go crazy also here. I know it's a bit wild, but when he gets healthy, Jimmy Rivera, Ricky Simon. Now, Simon is, to me, he's earned that shot against maybe a top 5 guy at 135. I know Ray Borg's not a big 135-pounder, but Ricky Simon, he deserves it.
Mr. Sean?
I was on mute here. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to go after our both of our guests' answer because Dan Ige and Max Holloway are both from Hawaii. They're just not going to fight each other. I don't see it. I do want to see Dan Ige fight. Needs an exciting fight. Saw it. It can take a bunch of damage. Let's give him another guy who does a lot of damage. Let's do Dan Ige, Hurricane Shane Burgos. That sounds like a lot of fun to me. I'm down with that. As for Ricky Simone, I'd probably given Ricky Simone too much of a jump here. But I like his style, and his style, I want to see him chase around Corey Sandhagen. I know Sandhagen's a little bit above him, but that's a fight I want to see. I want to see the all-action forward pressure style of Sandhagen versus the all-action forward pressure grappling style of Ricky Simone. And I think Simone probably needs like one more win to get up into that category, but that's the fight I want to see. So I definitely don't think Ige Holloway is going to happen, the two Hawaiians. So I like Ige Hurricane Shane, and I think that one's more. It's very, very likely could happen. In fact, I kind of think it will happen. And my dream matchup from the card is the weekend: Simone and Sandhagen. All the pressure, all the action.
Rebuttals. We're going to start with Riley.
All right, I'm just going to address what people were saying. Keith, you were saying that Drew Dober has said, I want a striker in my next fight. So what? Who cares what he wants? It's not his decision. If the UFC wants to put him against a grappler, to test him against a grappler to see if he's a legit contender, they're going to have to do that. So I agree. I'd rather see him fight a striker because it would be an exciting fight, but you also have to test guys where their weaknesses are to have them move up the card. To our guest who said Holloway versus Ige, that is the most ridiculous match I think I heard anybody mention here. Not even on the radar. And if I'm not mistaken, Holloway's fighting Alex Volkanovski in a rematch right away. So I think that's completely out of the question. I think Dan Ige versus Calvin Kattar, who also fought, I believe, last Saturday, so their timelines would kind of match up since they fought so recently. I think that's the best matchup to make, kind of similar to the Shane Burgos matchup. I liked what Sean said there. And then the Ricky Simone versus Corey Sandhagen.
Nice.
I think Sean said that. No, absolutely not. Sandhagen's going to get like a top 6 guy. I don't think Simone's going to get a guy that high. He'll get a guy probably in the top 15, but definitely not Sandhagen.
I agree. I just said that's the fight I want to see. I agree.
Yeah, well, it's out of the realm of possibility, fella.
Right now, is anything out of the realm of possibility? Anything?
Yes.
Keith.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to unwrap. Like, I don't even know who these guys are. It's Dan Ige, Ricky Simone, and Calvin Kattar. We had 3 guys get their names. We had 3 guys get their name pronounced wrong in the same segment. First of all, I don't understand the whole everyone giving Dan Ige a top 5 guy. He lost on Saturday. I mean, you don't believe it? Go to MMA Decisions. 16 out of 18 media members scored it for Edson Barboza, and people's response is give him former champion Max Holloway, who is they're already talking about is going to face Alex Volkanovski. You don't win a controversial fight and then go all the way up and fight Max Holloway. To me, that is terrible. Now, the other one is, why does Ricky Simone get so much love? He beat. I just said it earlier that I thought it was such a great fight, but he beat Ray Borg, who is not a true bantamweight, who lost his last fight at bantamweight also before this. And then Ricky Simone, people are calling for Ricky Simone to get a top 5 guy. He's won one of his last 3 fights, and you just like, what are we talking about? Listen, the biggest thing that we came out of this is Sean Shelby and Mick Maynard. Those guys can have, during the whole COVID-19, people losing their jobs. Those guys will never lose their job to the 3 panel something now, because that was absolutely ridiculous matchmaking. Someone like Simone should take on another like young prospect in the same area. Give him a guy who fought on the same card, Song Yadong. That's the guy you match him up with.
I was waiting for this version of Kevin Shifford to come out. I was waiting for this version of him to come out.
Keith, what matchup did I say that was a bad match?
Hold on. We still got another person.
Got 2 more.
I love how. I'll tie Chris, this into the next question here. But Keith, we keep saying, we got to have the best versus the best versus the best. Look, this is what the fun of sometimes fights are. We just let's see what we can do. Let's make take chances. Otherwise, we go by these ratings, which, let's face it, we have no idea. Danny Gay won. I mean, that's what he does. You win, you advance. I know that according to you, he lost, but you know what? You're not a judge. You're a media member. It's like me. Dan deserves a win. Dan won. So unfortunately, unless we want to do what UFC does and go, well, Chael lost a fight, but Chael's more deserving. So let's give Chael a title shot. I'm going, look, Dan won. Let's move him up. Holloway needs a breather. I'm not one of these guys who, let's just do what we do with Chris Weidman, run him into the ground with all these killer fights. Let's give guys who need a breather. It's a fun little scrap, and especially in let's face it, where a lot of cards aren't going to have fans. You don't want to give up the big, sexy fights. Let's just have some fun fights that okay, this is what we're going to do with business being business as it is.
Now, you do lose a point for, to my knowledge, Maybe I'm wrong, but to my knowledge, Chael Sonnen has never lost a fight. So even referencing that was incorrect.
Can I just say this?
Hold on, let
No,
Sean
Chris,
go.
no,
Let
you
Sean.
cannot.
No, I
let
gotta say
Sean
this. I gotta say this.
Keith, go ahead.
Say
Keith,
this.
all right, all
No,
right.
I'm gonna say it. I'm
Go
gonna keep
ahead.
saying because listen, you guys forget this. This is my show. All right.
Okay, here he is.
Chris
He's back.
Conner hold on. Chris Connor's talking about Dan Ige winning. Chris Conner himself didn't score the fight for Dan Ige. He scored it for Edson Barboza. Go to MMA Decisions. Chris Conner scored it for Edson Barboza. Go ahead, Sean.
I hate this show. Because this is what we got. Keith, the last point. By the way, I'm not with Chris. It's too far. Stop with the Ige Holloway. But Keith taking my words out of context and getting really loud. I said I know it's not a likely fight, but which fight is going to be a lot of fun? Stylistically, that's a fun fight. That's all I said, and I get screamed at to try to make a point and get extra points. You take my goddamn answer out of context. How about let's go to the other side of that fight. Let's pitch one more fight that I was looking at that I think is a lot of fun. Edson Barboza. Featherweight, look good. Obviously, I think he won the fight too. Probably still needs around a top 15-ish guy. Give me Edson Barboza, Super Sadiq Youssef. Two guys standing up, banging like that one a bunch. I think that's about where Barboza belongs, and I'd be a damn good matchmaker in the COVID era, Keith. How dare you?
Listen, what a good round. This is it. I like the tamer stuff, but this is more my speed. You know, we got to try to keep it wrangled in, but this is more my speed. Good round, good round.
I still want to know what matchup I said that Keith disagreed with.
He just likes to yell.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. You named like 40 matchups, so I'm sure I disagree with
Hey,
you.
I'm trying to fill cards, baby. 3 a week.
Well, first of all, Overeem should fight Derek Lewis instead of Volkov.
Let me just take on fucking Riley in the first round. That's how it always goes.
It will not be that. Riley is coming in first place. Keith is coming in second. Sean is coming in third. And Chris is coming in fourth. So it'll be Riley versus Chris and Keith versus Sean. Riley, would you like to go first or second as far as answering the question period?
I'll go second because I absolutely detest this question.
All right, perfect. And would you like to go first or second then in that matchup?
I'll go second as well.
All
I'm gonna probably pirate other people's answers and just change the wording.
Perfect. Keith, would you like to go first or second?
I will go second.
All right, Sean, the question is to you, sir. The judging on both Wednesday and Saturday's cards have garnered a lot of attention. We've discussed judging many times on the various iterations of this show, but I'd like to ask it in a different way. So this is a specific thing that's being suggested that I would like to get your opinion on. So, how would you feel about a panel of judges that handle decision appeals? So it would happen immediate. It would not happen after the fact. And it would be very similar to in the NFL where they, quote, call New York, right? It'd be something very similar. You'd go over to a booth or a whatever, and there's a secondary panel that would give you that would basically bless off on the scoring. If there's a discrepancy, then we could suggest what you would do, whether it get overturned to a no contest right then or whatever it is. So what are the pros and cons of this idea? If there are no pros, that's fine. If there are no cons, that's fine. And then after the pros and cons, just give me specifically, do you think it would even be possible? Even if it was all pros, do you think it's even remotely possible?
10 seconds.
So, Sean, go ahead.
So I don't like this idea because it just comes down to we need to get the right people in there. But I'm going to focus on the actual question. Pros and cons of this. Pros, I mean, maybe we'll get some people in the goddamn room who know what they're talking about or what they're looking at and get better people to make the final decision. Cons, then you get this whole thing. Who's in the room? Who's at cage side? Like, you need to just get it right in the first place. And you got people calling away. There's enough delay in the cage and the pacing is going to slow down. I think is well-intentioned, but I don't think it's the appropriate solution. It's possible, of course, with a technology is possible. The biggest con, though, to me, is when you're in the arena watching a fight, you score it differently. You just do. And a lot of times, the cards I've been to, I'll agree with the judge's decision, and my phone is blowing up. What the fuck was that? What was that? And I'm like, guys, I scored it the same exact way. Like being in
10
there on
seconds.
TV, it's very different things. Doesn't happen all the time, and this was just a bad decision. Doesn't apply to the specific case we're talking about, specifically Edson Barbosa, but it's just that's a con to this. Arena versus TV, way different ball game, and the fight should be judged in the arena. The guy cage side.
Sean, Keith.
Yeah, I mean, I actually agree with Sean. I mean, it just simply wouldn't work. I mean, you think about first of all, you can appeal now. Like, fighters can appeal decisions now. Edson Barbosa's team's going to appeal it. They're not going to win. Commissions are not going to overturn their own people. It's like saying, our people are inadequate. It's not good. Plus, the NFL, they're going by an instant replay where a replay can show they got it wrong. It's not necessarily a judgment call. When the NFL has been allowed to go against judgment calls like pass interference, the NFL was the big criticism was that they wouldn't overturn pass interference terms. It just wasn't happening because they don't want to make their own referees look bad. And then what else is it going to be? Is it going to be like it's just going to be another person's opinion? So people sit in the booth saying, "Yeah, like we thought Edson Barbosa won." They should get it. So I don't think it would really work out that sense where you just have the same thing. It's just another person's opinion. There's not, as Sean made a good point, and I'm going to jump on it, is we've already complained about how slow the pacing in the East Coast. Pay-per-views end at 1 a.m. Imagine if you had 7 decisions. You had to go to 7 appeals. You're talking about ending at 2 a.m. now. You just can't. The best thing you can do is to continue to train judges. And here's another thing: people throw out the word robbery. There was 3, controversial decisions. Two of them was razor close. It could have went either way. Like Song Yadong didn't win a robbery. That fight was crazy close. Claudia Gadelha didn't win a robbery. That fight was crazy close. Like so, I mean, we're gonna keep going to judges on everything. It would be an absolute nightmare.
Is there a criteria, Sean? Is there a criteria that would work for this? Say only split decisions would qualify. It wouldn't just be decisions as a whole. If it's a split decision, that's how it would qualify for an appeal. And I guess, you only have 60 seconds, but if you have a suggestion of what could help with judging, be my guest.
So I don't think it's going to split. It's for all the same reasons. It's the same issue. The crux of the issue, we need to get the right people judging these fights. The Sal Diamano, Derek Clear, these boxing guys. Like, I'm not saying just throw them all out, although some of them you probably should. My suggestion for this, you need to retrain. You need to get some type of recertification. Get the right judges in there. Have a small pool for the UFC. Have like 20 to 25 judges. These are the only people who are going to judge UFC MMA fights. And you can have other guys train at the Titans and the Legacy and all that stuff and build your way up from there. You need to really shrink the judges, especially in places like Texas. You got judges I've never heard of scoring awful fights who train with guys. I know it's the Wild West still with state commissions running it. It needs the judging commission or the commissions need to somehow nationalize who's going to judge and referees those fights. The referees are pretty standard because there's only so many high-level ones, but the judging is still the Wild West. We need a national sanctioned body, and only this number of major league or super certified, whatever you want to call it, judges are going to score at the highest level and have everybody else, the minor leagues, and work their way up based on evaluations.
Keith, same rebuttal prompt to you.
Yeah, I mean, this is a much better part of the question. So the first thing they need to do is have unified rules. You can't have different rules in different states. I mean, imagine an NFL game like if it's played in Foxborough, it's 7 points for a touchdown, but if it's played in Cincinnati, it's 5 points for a touchdown, and you can only throw the ball 30 yards. You can't throw it further than that. We're the only sport, depending on where you go, you have different rules. So the first thing is we need true unified rules. The other thing is the judges should be MMA judges, not guys who also judge boxing or judge kickboxing. You should have a set MMA judges so they know what, the sports are different. Just because you've been judging boxing for 30 years does not make you competent enough to judge MMA. As far as a split decision, theoretically, that would work better. Like that means it's more controversial, but let's think about it. Let's just go by this past weekend's cards.
10 seconds.
That means we'd have to be reviewing Ben Rothwell, Ovin St. Preux, and Ricky Simone and Ray Borg. Those are 2 split decisions, but we wouldn't have reviewed Song Yadong and Marlon Vera, which was a unanimous decision. And how about what most people are saying, the biggest robbery, even though I don't think it was a robbery, but I don't agree with the decision.
Dominic Reyes, John Jones wouldn't have went to a review because John Jones won a unanimous decision. So that wouldn't have been a review. So to me, the whole split decision would still have to be changed anyways.
All right. Good round, folks. Riley, you said second. So, Chris, Connor, do you want me to
Can I
repeat
step
the
in
question,
and
or
go
do you
first now or no?
I mean, you are the higher seed. I guess you can do that.
All right, cool. So I have a few thoughts on this. I think number one, I don't want to limit anybody from going because I think you can train anybody to be a judge if they're trained properly. But I think a large swath of the judges that we're going to have in MMA need to have MMA experience, be ex-fighters, retired fighters. I remember Ricardo Almeida became an MMA judge after he retired. I think that's the best way to look at it. This review rule that you're kind of citing like the NFL does, I think it's stupid because it would be the same thing as if we just added judges. So instead of 3 judges, we had 5. And you're going to have a sanctioning body overturning a judge. What's the point of having the judges then? You would just literally, ask them who won the fight. And here's the other reason that doesn't work. In the NFL, they review a singular play. They do not review the results of a game and overturn them. That's what you're basically doing here. You're overturning the results of a fight, not an individual play. And the last thing Sean had said, there's a difference between being at home and watching on TV and being at the arena. If I'm not mistaken, don't the judges use monitors anyways in the same way that color commentators and play-by-plays use monitors? So it's kind of similar than that.
Chris?
Yeah, you know what? I'm all for changing things because, trust me, I've seen bad scoring in boxing, bad scoring in MMA, and it pisses me off. But the whole calling to New York, as Keith brought out, I'm on the East Coast. These fights last till 12 o'clock. Now you're talking maybe lasting to 3 o'clock in the morning, maybe 4 o'clock in the morning because every split decision, every controversial decision, the fighter's going to go, they're going to go, hey, call New York. To me, that's just a waste of time. I do think you need national judges. I'd also say that maybe it's time we take judges away from ringside because too often judges get swayed by the crowd. When I say that, you have these fighters when they fight at home, and we know if you go to Brazil, every time a Brazilian lands even a small jab, they go ballistic. And that does affect the judges because they think there's more damage. Maybe you put them in, a media room. Maybe you have them just watch the fights on the monitors, not have to worry about being at ringside, not have to worry about, well, I can't see this, I can't see that. But to me, you got to do something. You got to get better judges who understand, a takedown doesn't mean you won the round because the guy didn't do anything. Just because the guy was on top, but he was fighting off submissions does not mean that he won that round. They got to do something, and I'd bring in trainers. I'd bring in a lot of MMA trainers who don't have a fighter on that card because they at least know what's going on. They can at least judge a fight and go, okay, this guy won because of this and that. This guy lost because of that and this. We need people who at least understand the difficulties of MMA and how to score stuff.
I'll say, and I hope I don't take Riley's thunder. I don't know if he was going to respond to this or not. But we're having issues with the judging, and I've always said, okay, the crowd noise is the biggest problem. And then we had crazy judging, and there's no crowd. So, that kind of gets taken away just as a response to that, because that's something that I've always been that was my number one thing. My number one thing is that crowd noise was the biggest issue. And then here we are, no crowd and a bunch of arguably bad decisions. So, I don't know. It's weird. Riley?
Oh, no, thank you for taking exactly what my argument was going to be. I mean, it's not like I'm on the debate show and you're the host. In terms of the crowd can sway the judges, I get that argument. But as you said, empty arenas, they're not swaying anybody, and we still had questionable decisions. The second thing, too, is, okay, say we put them in a media room or we have them not watching from the arena so the crowd doesn't affect them. You don't think they have sound on these TVs? You're not going to hear the crowd reactions when someone lands a big punch? I think that the crowd noise, yeah, will it affect decisions? Yeah, but I don't think it's going to affect them enough to really cause, us to have to change the way that judges are attending fights and that. And then the last thing I'm going to say is I forgot the gentleman's name. I think it's Chris or Connor or whatever.
Chris. That's fine.
Chris. You wanted to have trainers who don't have fighters on the card be judges. I don't think that's a good idea either, though, because so many fighters cross-train. They go to other gyms to work. So they still know these trainers personally. They still worked with these trainers. So there's still some bias there. So I don't think that having trainers as judges is a very good idea either.
Riley, do you think there's bias to having fighters in general?
I think there can. I definitely think that fighters there can be some bias, but again, a lot of these fighters, unless they have somebody at their gym or somebody that they've trained with for years, I don't think there's an actual bias that would come from fighters because and with fighters instead of trainers, again, trainers have a personal relationship, whereas fighters, if they're just training with them one or two times, or they've only seen them at the gym once, or they went to their gym once, I don't think there's as much of a bias, and I think fighters would respect that as well.
Chris, go ahead.
You know, I've been I like Riley a lot. He brings the heat, but let's face it, if we had ex-fighters, Colby Covington would lose every fight he fought because half the fighters hate him. Fighters have biases. I mean, look, Brazilians are very close to Brazilians. You have East Coast guys who they train a lot together. They probably came from the same college. There's always going to be a bias. At least with trainers, you know, there is that, at least they know what they're looking for. They understand. Is it perfect? No. I mean, look, we're trying to get a perfect system. That's like asking, you know, a chimpanzee to go, speak Latin. It's not going to happen. But at this point, we might as well try something because the current model is not working. Florida showed that, you know, you can't just get guys in there who have boxing or who have some maybe kickboxing experience or no experience. And unfortunately, the local commissions, it's very political. It's who do you donate to? Whose campaign did you give money to? Whose friend or wife or brother are you related to? And as I said, maybe it's time we just go wild and crazy because at this point, I'm just tired of us going, judging sucks. Let's try to knock him out and let's hope for the best.
Okay. All right, guys. Good round. I kind of wish we had a review board here because, of course, my decisions will be questioned. People will cry. It is what it is. What are you going to do? First going into the finals is going to be Keith Schillen. And second going into the finals is going to be Riley Contek. Sean?
Sean got robbed again.
Sean?
Kyle, I don't know what I have to do with you. You need to re-listen to these. I'm not even mad anymore. I'm actually frustrated. It's the second time in a row, I think pretty clearly I've beaten Keith, and your butt buddy wins again. And now I'm going to ruin the last question because the best class – no, I should do it. I want to read my answer.
Don't do it.
Every time I'm excited about the last question.
You know what? I want to throw the peel here. I want to call it court. So I say we all should get at least our 2 cents in. If you want to have two favorites, fine. But
we're not.
I want to throw the challenge. I'm throwing a challenge right now.
We're getting knocked out because Kyle, you need to actually go and re-listen to the episodes as you mock edit them because the second time in a row, Keith just repeated my answer. Whatever. It's pretty ridiculous. Pretty ridiculous. That's the mandatory crying that needs to be done. If Patrick was here, he would have hung up.
Chris, your mandatory crying, sir?
I'm throwing a challenge that I got here. I mean, hey, since you brought this up, we need to call New York. I want to call New York. I want to call somebody here because, hey, you're biased here, you know, as I said. So I'm with the big guy here. We are throwing a challenge. We want to be heard, and since there is no New York, we should have our final say.
You could call New York, and I still whooped that ass in that round, so they wouldn't have changed their minds.
Yeah, okay. The nipples are showing. All right.
They're getting hard with excitement of going into the finals with Keith. All right, for real, Sean.
I think next time you put me against Keith, I'm just going to drop off.
I like you guys think I'm a bias.
And it's not. Oh, you absolutely do. You need to re-listen to it.
You realize Keith is my least favorite person on this podcast, and it's
yeah, but he does all your work. He does all your work for you, so you kiss ass.
Kyle, be 100% honest. Tell me you haven't in the past said that you grade me on a curve, and I get a harder grade than everyone else. Be honest.
I have said that, yes.
All right, there you go.
Also, I want to point out, as the Jeff Spicoli of this show, I just made the finals. That should tell you all you need to know.
I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna message Riley here on Discord and give him my answer so he wins.
I'll take it.
Because you have a good track record against me. Yeah, you can do that. Yeah, please do that. There you go.
The
There's
only
another
reason
win
I don't
for me.
because-
There's another
yeah,
win
only
for me, Sean.
because Kyle
Hey,
hates-
Sean. Sean, just go honestly, dude.
If you
It's
weren't
your
the editor
wedding
of this network,
It's-
if you weren't the
It's
director
your wedding
of this
anniversary. It's your wedding anniversary. Get out of here, man.
Sean, it was a pleasure, my friend. All right, let's go to the finals here. 90 seconds are on the clock. You know what? Riley, do you want to go first or second?
I'll leave that up to Keith. I'll be a gentleman here.
I like it.
All right, I'll go second.
All right, Mr. Riley, you have 90 seconds, sir. There's a lot of Connor talk recently. He's been pretty active on Twitter and hinting at a return sooner rather than later. I believed he said July. He's also said a lot of things, and that doesn't make it true. But he does seem to be much more active and much more likely to get back in there. And this has made me wonder, could Connor and Habib realistically be on the same card without fighting one another? Would it make sense for the UFC? Are you blowing too big of a load? Is it perfectly fine? Is that what we would call like a jumbo card? Again, why or why not? In your opinion, what would be the highest profile main card that the UFC could reasonably put together? Again, we can list off a whole bunch of fighters that would just make a jumbo card, but let's make it realistic as far as the money the UFC would have to spend on that card, and again, blowing your load for the entire year. So realistically, what is the highest profile card you could put together, and could you put Connor and Habib on the same card? Riley, go ahead. 90 seconds.
I would love if they would put Connor and Habib on the same card. Do I think they're going to? I don't. I don't think they're going to take two of their highest draws and put them in separate fights. I mean, which one do you make the main event and which one is the co-main event? Obviously, I would think Habib would be the main event, but seeing that Connor's the biggest draw in MMA history, I don't see how you could put him in a co-main event situation. The guy is a main event fighter. He does not take non-main event fights. In terms of security, can we keep these guys from fighting? Yeah, you got to invest in a lot of security. And I think obviously the UFC would do that. They'd obviously try to keep them both on their best behavior because they don't want them doing anything that will embarrass the company and maybe have to call the fight off. I think that, part of them being in the same building or the same area with a bunch of security, you have chances for those sound bites, those potential conflicts, and you use that to build a second fight with them at some point. But in terms of the card itself, if you were able to do that, I think in the main event you have Habib versus Justin Gaethje. I think that's an obvious no-brainer. I think you have Conor McGregor obviously would be in the co-main event. Who he would be against? I mean, there's a number of fights he could take. The only person I wouldn't have him fight is Tony Ferguson, obviously based on the beatdown he took recently, and I don't think he's going to be back for a while. And then, I think that you could, realistically have guys on the card like Colby Covington on the main card. You could have guys, former champions like a Robbie Lawler on the card to, again, add the name and also have a guy who's really, really exciting and is a guy that, kill or go out on his shield. I think that's the best you can do. I know people were talking about Francis Ngannou and John Jones. I don't think that would be possible to get all three of those on the card, though.
Keith?
All right, so you said, would it be a jumbo card? Any card that Conor McGregor on is a jumbo card, no matter who else is on the co-main event. So it doesn't matter. He's going to sell over 1 million buys regardless. Would Habib and Conor being on the same card and not fighting each other, would it be the biggest card, most stacked? Yes, it would be the most stacked. But the problem is, you said, would it be the most realistic? It wouldn't be realistic because it's not going to happen unless they go, like Riley said, unless they're going to fight each other. I'm going to tell you right now, Riley said, who would be in the co-main event? And he said, Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor is not ever going to be in a co-main event. I don't care if he loses his next 5 fights. That's not going to happen. Like he said, he's the biggest star in sport. But that said, we've seen the pride of Habib. He's not going to take a backseat, especially after beating him. We saw when Conor tried being the prima donna at the press conference and he showed up and said, I'm giving you 5 minutes and I'm out of here. And he started right on time. That Habib is a guy with his morals. He was really going to stay. He was going to stay out unless they unsuspended his teammates. And then they get that. You still have the bad blood. You have to beef up security. But you know what happened when anytime you have Conor and Habib, you're going to have press conferences. And what's going to happen? They're going to be getting asked questions about about each other instead of the fights that they're in. So it would overshadow. So a guy like Justin Gaethje, would get overshadowed, or say Conor's going against Nate Diaz. And the other thing is, why put them together? The UFC has 12 months that they have to fill cards with a big one. You could put one on in August, one in September. Instead of having one mega card that wouldn't sell double, you could have both of them separately. And then, all you got to do is look at how hard they're struggling to put guys, getting big main events right now. You got Felicia Spencer in a main event. No, you don't waste them, put them on the same card.
So let's try to get to this part of the answer. I'm very interested in this answer. Would be, reasonably speaking, what is the biggest UFC main card they could put together? We've already established from both of you that Khabib and Conor could not be on the same card together. So that's not a reasonable expectation then for a major card. And again, let's not take the easy answer saying you put Conor on any card, it becomes a jumbo. We can have Conor on the card, but let's fill out the rest of the main. Who else can reasonably we put on that card to make it that jumbo card? So, Riley, that's the angle I want to go here.
So, yeah, if you want to do a jumbo card with Conor on top, and Keith, I did say I don't think that they would do this. I don't think either one of those guys is willing to take a co-main event slot. I absolutely did say that. But, the biggest card I can think of is Conor on top, because as much as I love Khabib, Conor is a bigger box office draw. There's nobody who's a bigger box office draw in the history of the sport. I reasonably think that you could put 2 title fights under Conor McGregor and sell that as a super card. Now, could you use John Jones in that? Maybe. I don't think he's not getting a main event either, because he's another one of the biggest draws in the company. But I think you could certainly put a Kamaru Usman title fight on there, a welterweight title fight, because he's not exactly a proven draw yet, but his championship status certainly gives him enough credibility to be in a co-main event slot. And then again, also you could have another title fight if you want to go the route of featherweight and have another Volkanovski Holloway. You could put that on that fight card too, and it doesn't have to be a co-main event because again, Volkanovski is not really an established draw. Max Holloway, when he was champion, was not the biggest draw himself. He did okay. But again, he's a guy that you could take out and put in that third slot. And then you have 2 other big name guys who are non-title fights in those first 2 opening slots. Again, if you want to have a backup for Kamaru Usman, if who he fights falls out, you have a Colby Covington fight versus Tyron Woodley or something to open the card. And then you have another fight. Say you do the featherweight, then you have a featherweight bout with the next 2 guys, maybe Zabit and whoever else he fights. So I think that's the best card you're going to get given that.
Keith?
Well, yeah, if you want the biggest card, I'll give you the whole, I'll give you the whole main card if you really want it. I agree with Riley. If we're saying biggest card, well, the biggest card is going to be Conor McGregor. So you put Conor McGregor in the main event. Well, if we're saying Khabib is fighting Justin Gaethje, who's the only other fight that really makes sense? And also, you're not I want to be strategic with who I put against Conor because I don't want to put my other guys who could sell without Conor. I want someone who needs to sell with Conor. So to me, it's the time to do the trilogy fight. That's a winnable fight for Conor. I think it's a good stylistic matchup. I think Nate looked terrible in his last fight. So now Conor can get that trilogy, win the trilogy, which he'll have forever, and it's a perfect timing. So now I agree with Riley. You should go 2 main events. 2 title fights under. How about the middleweight champion of the world, Israel Adesanya? He is a guy that is right on the cusp of becoming a star. Well, give him the Conor bump. Let him be on there. Let him be up in the press conference, Conor saying the clever things he does. Let him have a good showing. Of course, Paulo Costa. That fight is incredible. Have those 2 guys. They're back and forth. That's the co-main event. And then I would go with now. So you got your star. You got your one who's budding star, and then you have that champion that can't really sell. So you throw in whoever you want there. I would go with probably Weili Zhang versus Tatiana Suarez, or maybe if you want to do Valentina Shevchenko versus insert whoever you think is next for Valentina Shevchenko. So then you got 2 more fights on the main card. You go with a fan favorite, people that recognize. Tony Ferguson, Dustin Poirier. The good thing is Dustin Poirier has been linked with Conor and Diaz, so if something happened, you can put Poirier right into the main event against one of those guys. He's linked to both of them. And then last one, you get an action fight, upcoming fighters. How about a guy like Sean O'Malley, another guy you can make into a star? I'll have him open the card, put him against, say, Brian Kelleher always brings it. There's an absolute loaded card, and it makes sense.
Can I mention one thing before you make your decision?
Yeah, he's going to say Tatiana Suarez is her. How realistic is that? I don't know. We're talking about this mega card that when is going to happen? We're in COVID-19. Like, when is this
Right.
even going to happen? We don't even know when the next fight card is. So, yeah, maybe I'm planning for October or something.
The
Who
one
knows?
thing I want to mention, though, with Keith is for the two underneath title fights, I think you have to have so in my case, it was the welterweight and the featherweight title. I think your other two main card fights have to be top welterweights and top featherweights in the event one of those fights gets canceled due to one of the competitors being injured. That's what they do a lot of times. They always have backup fighters on the card to step up in that case.
Yeah, which is true, but I would have it lowered down, and I thought of the backup plan, which is why I threw Tony Ferguson, Dustin Poirier, because I thought of the backup plan. I had that in my original answer, and then you have Dustin Poirier, who's linked to both guys. Remember, he was supposed to fight Nate Diaz. He's been talking with Conor. They've been going back and forth. Boom, he's the perfect fill-in. That's why I even had the backdoor fill-in. I had it all covered. I won. See you later. Nice job, Riley.
I want to jump in here quickly because I know I've been eliminated.
Chris.
This is something we haven't talked about is Endeavor's losing a lot of money. We don't know when everything's going to be reopened up. Conor drives his last fight $10 million off a gate. I think a lot of us we can speculate, but all depends on this. What is Disney going to say? They're the ones right now who they're looking around going, we need money. We're losing it because of no NBA, no NHL. We're not sure if the NFL might come back because, hey, the coronavirus might stop that. I think it all depends. I mean, I could see a Conor, Habib, even Francis Ngannou if Endeavor says, all right, Disney, you give us $50 million to play with, $100 million to play with, we'll put this on because, as I said, we don't know what's going on here. I mean, with coronavirus, right now we're not going to get any big cards because nobody wants to risk those big $10 million purse gates and basically waste on a crowd of nobody.
Sean, we're reaching into the graveyard. Do you want to pop in? Do you got anything?
Oh, good Lord.
I mean, of course I do. I'll be a little nicer. I don't hate that point because if Disney throws around more money, reasonable goes out the window, and you can start throwing on my card before you added the reasonable because of salary. If that goes away, then you got DC, Stipe 3, Adesanya, Costa, Volkanovski, Holloway, and the one I said in chat that why did no one mention it's relatively cheap too? Peter Yan, Corey Sandhagen for what's going to be a vacant bantamweight title. Like that's the move.
Well, that would
Because
fit
it should
into
be Peter Yan versus Marlon Moraes.
Fuck Marlon Moraes.
Yeah, well, all right. And also, I kind of felt like I did mention it when I said it would fall into the guys who can't sell. They would fall in that. I didn't name every single fighter on the roster. But to answer Chris's question, he asked his question was, what would Disney have to say? Well, I know the answer. The answer is Keith won.
All right, the winner of this. What episode is this? Do we have any idea now? I'm not looking at it. The winner of whatever this number of Last One Standing is Mr. Riley Contek. Riley, you did it, my friend. You did it, my friend.
My reputation is being tarnished right now because last week I would have won, but I threw a dive at the end. People are going to start thinking I actually know things, so we have to get back to next week where I just blatantly don't answer questions and just talk about John Jones the whole time.
Please don't. I like this version of you much better. Keith, we always give the people on their way out something to say anyway, so go ahead.
I mean, I clearly won that, but this is the worst decision since we stopped the show to let Kyle not die from asthma. So let's get on.
Since 5 minutes ago when Keith beat me.
Riley, the floor is yours.
Oh, I don't have much to say. I think, if I had put in this type of effort the first few shows here, you would have been seeing me whooping Keith's ass every week as I usually do. So, maybe next week I'll take it easy on the poor little fella from Rhode Island.
It was a pleasure, guys. Riley, thank you. Keith, thank you. Sean, thank you. Chris, thank you. Next week, I assume Patrick will be back. We will have a full panel again, and we'll go from there. See you guys soon.